talk about Cosential reporting today. And for all those that are not Cosential users, it's okay. If you're here to check out the software, what it has to offer, feel free to stay. We are going to be talking about the specifics of Cosential. So if you are not a Cosential user, feel free to stay, but we are talking about that specific system today. I want to introduce myself. I'm Courtney Kearney, founder and owner of C. Kearney Consulting. Thank you so much for spending the next 30 minutes with me. It will be fast and furious, but there is a recording. So if you need to go back and maybe freeze the frame, look at certain things in your account compared to the webinar today, there will be a link and a follow-up. You can also get that on our website. Speaking of our website, we have a ton of free resources on our website available. So if you go out to ckearneyconsulting.com, you can get the information from past webinars, see our upcoming events. We have a monthly CRM call on the second Thursday of every month. And we have guest speakers that come on to talk about go, no go, or how do you have BD involved in your CRM. This coming Thursday, we have Christina Leahy from Cosential talking about all things integration and where to start. How do you get our accounting involved? How do you get IT involved in your integration with your CRM system? Looking at our marketing calls, we have that on the first Wednesday of every month. So feel free to check that out. Next month, we're going to be hearing from Julie Howlett, which is exciting. And then we're doing these free webinars the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. So I'm glad to have you here. If you are a Cosential user, you might want to check out the series that we did for all the new features. Part 1 was just overall new features. Part 2 was Cosential for Outlook. And then 3 was mobile. I did want to kick off today with a poll. So let me fire up our first poll. The question is for the Cosential users on the call, how well do you feel that your firm is utilizing the reports module? All right, that poll has launched, so feel free to pick your response. Extremely well, very well, somewhat well, not so well. And then we don't have Cosential. So I wanted to definitely give those, if you are not a Cosential users, an answer. So I know that you are here. All right, we're at 85%. I'll give about 5 more seconds for everyone to answer, and then I will end the poll. All right, thank you for everyone's participation. So we've got 8% at extremely well, 33% very well, 17%, let's see if I can share. There we go. 17% somewhat well, and then 42%, so the majority sitting at not so well. You're in the right place. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you will feel empowered and equipped after this presentation to take on the reports module and bump up your not so well to somewhat well. We're going to kick it off with some reporting best practices. So you'll hear me often say, I distrust and verify. So really distrusting whatever information I'm looking at. So if it's a widget, if it's, a widget is a really good example, but I really want to always verify and I want to have confidence in what I'm looking at. So that's where I rely heavily on reports. So always starting with the end in mind, and this is where reporting is helpful. So really working backwards. If you are beginning to implement your system or re-implement your system and you're looking at your opportunity records and you're thinking through, do we really need all 50 of the opportunity records that Cosential gives us out of the box turned on? My answer right now, I'm telling you, is no. You should have things turned off. So really honing in on working backwards. And what I mean by that is, what are the things that you want to track? What are the metrics that leadership is looking at, or the data analytics that you need? So when you're thinking about hit rate, the report has a built-in hit rate for shortlisted and interviewed. These depend on the shortlisted yes, no drop-down field and the interviewed yes, no drop-down field. Those are hard-coded to the reports. So if you want to use that, it can be a powerful tool to you, but working backwards, that tells me I need to require those fields to be answered at certain stages. So if you have a stage that is interviewed or shortlisted, then that yes, no can be required. Or better yet, don't trust your users to remember to make those selections, because if they do it on the grid, they could bypass those requirements. Set a workflow. Use your workflow to set the shortlisted to yes if the stage is changed to shortlisted. Same thing with your interviewed. Now, working backwards, if I want to be able to, at the end of the year, look at everything that I pursued in a specific market, I want to know what I pursued in K through 12 education, then every opportunity needs to be categorized so that I can pull those analytics. If I want to know my hit rate by a specific business developer, I have to have a business developer on every opportunity. If I want to know my hit rate by dollar volume, you guessed it, you have to have a dollar field associated. Now, some of my clients get tricky and they like to see a pessimistic view versus an optimistic view. So how you can achieve that is looking at your factored fee versus your full fee. So factored fee is a calculation in Cosential. It takes the firm fee, or what your firm is going to get out of that contract, and multiplies it for the win probability, the project probability, and the funding probability. That last one is new. So if you haven't gone into the back end of Cosential to see that that is a field that is there now, you can have that be part of the calculation. If it's turned off, it just isn't part of the calculation. All right, so looking at factored fee, you've got win probability, the likelihood that your firm is going to win that pursuit. Project probability, the likelihood that that project will come to fruition, that it will move forward and be built, designed, engineered. Funding probability, what's the probability that that will actually get funding, whether that's a bond, a loan, a grant? What is the probability that the funding will come through? So those are the three probabilities that are calculated, taking into the consideration of your firm's fee, and that gives you the factored fee. So again, that pessimistic view versus the optimistic view. Now, if I want to project both of those on a widget, I have to have all four of those fields to get that calculation. So running reports to make sure that all of those are filled in, or knowing that I want the factored fee tells me that I need these. So really starting with what reports do I need at the end gives me what fields I need in my reports. That was just opportunities. You can take that into personnel for your resumes. You can take it into projects for cut sheets. You can really apply that logic to any part of Cosential. Same thing with the activities, call logs, thinking backwards. How do I want to report on my call logs? Do I want to see every phone call? Do I want to see everything that I need to follow up on? Then those tags need to be in that call log. For every widget, there should be a backup report. Again, distrust and verify. So bugs happen. That is any sort of technology, any sort of SaaS program that we're dealing with, there are bugs that will appear. So when you sign in and you're going, oh, that pipeline, something about it looks really off. Maybe the height doesn't look right, or the numbers are off. But if you have a backup report already ready, then you can know, oh, there's a bug. This is what my report said. This is what the widget said. Something's off. Looking at your reports module as a whole. So the reports that have been created, that should be reviewed quarterly for maintenance. Get the reports that are not being used out of there and keep it clean. And in the event that you go back to one and you're like, oh, I deleted it 2 quarters ago. Okay, just recreate it. It's not the end of the world. But what is the end of the world is having so many reports that your users shut off and never use it. That you don't want to have happen. And then audit reports for data hygiene. Those are the data hygiene's best friend. Audit reports, exception reports, maintenance reports, whatever you want to call them. We're going to go through a ton of examples, but that is how you achieve data hygiene. Now, looking a little bit at these more specifically. So data is like garbage. You better know what you're going to do with it before you start collecting it. I love that quote. I used it at the last webinar, but it is my new best friend. This leads us to our next poll. Do you have a report for every widget on your dashboard? Hopefully we have none in that last category of we don't use dashboard widgets at all. But I'll give us a few more seconds to respond. We're about half have responded so far. So do you have reports backing up every widget? And maybe I'll be generous, the majority of your dashboard widgets, maybe not every single one. All right, we'll do 2 more seconds. All right, thank you for participating. I'm going to share the results. All right, so we've got 90% at no and 10% we don't use dashboard widgets. All right, so we'll do a future webinar on dashboard widgets. So hopefully whoever is in that category will attend that webinar and start using those dashboard widgets as a very powerful feature of Cosential. For all of you who are in the no category for having those reports, after this webinar, I would definitely encourage you to go create those. So here's an example of an opportunity pipeline. This is a very common beginner widget that everybody uses. So it's looking at any stage that you select. So you can have all of your stages, you can have just your open stages. You can exclude a long lead and just have your pursuit stages. Whatever stages you have select to display, you want a report grouped to match this. So for this one on my screen, it's every stage. So for my report, I would group all opportunities by stage. And then I want to verify by both count and dollars. So you'll see on the right-hand side of my pipeline, it is displaying the stage name and then the dollars, comma, and then a number. That's the number of records in that stage. Here's one thing that people miss. If you hover over a specific color or a specific stage, it will display the stage name, the dollars, comma, and then a percentage. This is the count percentage. So this one has 5, whereas all the others have 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. So you'll see that all the 2s are the equivalent height. The 1 is the skinniest, and then the one that has 5 records is the thickest or the tallest, because it makes up 31% of our total. So you want to make sure that if you get in one day and all of a sudden that blue is the thickest and it still only has 2 records sitting there, something's wrong, something's off. So you can look at the report and say, no, really the green, the 04 preparation should be the tallest. And then when you support that, or when you submit the support ticket, you've already got the report backing it up. All right, moving on to our second best practice of, do you perform quarterly maintenance? And if so, do you use the reports manager within the reports module? Zoom is moving stuff around on me. Okay. All right, we're about 53% participation. I'll give it 2 more seconds and then I'll end the poll. So do you perform quarterly maintenance on reports? And if so, are you using the reports manager within the reports module? All right, we're going to end the poll, share the results. All right, so it looks like we have 60% performing quarterly maintenance. Fantastic. That is awesome. The 40% that said no, maybe shoot by having your quarterly maintenance of twice a year. Start there, once a year. Looking at those that do, 50% use the reports manager, 30% do not, and 20% don't even know about the reports manager. So for those that don't, let's learn about it. All right, so here's a screenshot of my Cosential account looking at the second tab when you go to the reports manager. Sorry, the reports module. So when you click reports on the left from your module bar, you have to click the reports manager from your bar at the top. When you get here, it will show you some statistics on your reports. So looking at the status, if it's public or private, who created it, how long it takes to run the report. Some people ask me, why do we care? Really, it's for some of those reports that if you're running every contact in your system or a report with 30 different fields, it gives you an expectation as to knowing how, if it's going to be a minute, 2 minutes to run this report, then if my expectation was 2 seconds, then I'm going to think something's wrong with Cosential. So it's really just an expectation gauge so that you know when you're going to run it. So looking at who last used it, but here's the key, last used date. So if I haven't used any of these since 2019, 2018, get rid of them. Clean house, Marie Kondo, that bad boy, go ahead and get rid of it. If people used it January of 2021 or 2020, maybe not keep it depending on what it is. The other part to look at is the uses right next to it in that column. If people created it and never used it again, get rid of it. You don't need it. If they created it and it just says one use, then they used it the time that they created it. So really just looking at these 2 last fields on the far right will help you clean house for your reports module. All right, this brings us to our final poll of the day, and we're looking at audit reports, maintenance reports, exception reports, whatever you call them internally. Do you run regular reports to audit your data or audit your fields so that you know what is or isn't being used within your system, what is and isn't populated? All right, we've got good participation on this one, so I'll give it about 3 more seconds. Perfect. That is fantastic. 73% are using audit reports and running them on a regular basis. 27% are not. For all of you, either you have them or you don't. We're going to go through some examples, and hopefully for those that don't have them, you can put some in place, and maybe for those that are using them, you'll get some new ideas. Thank you so much for your participation in the polls today. That's very helpful. So audit reports are reports that are looking for missing or incomplete data. It's as simple as that. Don't make it any more difficult than that fact alone. Some people get really worried or scared by audit reports. They don't have to be. It's just looking for what's missing. So some examples when it comes to contact data. If you've attended a webinar before, you've heard me say, I am not a fan of orphans when they're running around my CRM. I want to love on orphans in real life. I want to eliminate them in my CRM. So I do not want a contact without an owner. I do not want a contact record without an internal employee or personnel having been tagged to that. Here's why. If that person leaves, I want to be able to have their contact list and give it to their replacement, give it to their boss, disperse it amongst other employees. I never want all of those relationships to walk out the door. No way. I want to be able to contact those people and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, so-and-so is no longer with our firm. However, this is your new point of contact. We're so happy to form that relationship. Can we jump on a Zoom to get to know one another? Hopefully have lunch one day. So you don't want orphans running around the system. Now the question is, hey, Courtney, we've had the system forever, and this record was created back in 1999, and there's no owner. Inactivate that. Just empower yourself to inactivate contacts. Here's the deal. Likely they're not even where they were back in 1999. If they need to come back to life, they will, and you can make them active again. The best thing you can do is clean house, because if you don't have an owner and there is no one to be connected to that contact, why are they in your system? Now, for the marketers on the call, there are times that we have to submit an RFP, RFQ, SOQ to a contact and ain't nobody know them, or maybe they're just the facilities guy or the facilities receptionist who's taking the RFP. Cool. If that is the case, whoever is responsible for that RFQ, RFP, SOQ, put them as the secondary owner. They know the history. They know why this person got put in the system. But when that secondary owner description comes along, then everybody else in the system knows, oh, I can't call Courtney to ask what's the relationship with this person. They just entered them because of XYZ. Looking at emails. This is huge if you are doing email campaigns. If you are sending out quarterly reports or monthly email campaigns, then every contact had better have an email address or they're not hearing from you. Looking at your addresses. If you are doing any sort of physical mailers, every record better have an address or they are not getting those mailers. Looking at your contact type. So here's a tricky one, and this is where a lot of chaos ensues. When you're thinking of a contact type, you have to be very careful as what are you describing in that value list. Typically, you want to be describing that person's role or their level of influence or what they intend to do with whatever your service is. Are they the end user of the building? Are they the facilities manager? Are they just accounting? What is that person's role in relationship to your firm or within their firm? Either way, if you plan to do any sort of targeted marketing so that you want to reach out to all of your architecture firms and narrow in on the decision makers, the only way to do that is if your contact type is populated. When I was the CRM manager, I would run these reports every Friday, and I would hit up whoever created a contact without an email address and say, happy Friday, give me the email address. Looking at the orphans, we had the owner required, but there were still ways that if you scanned it or didn't have certain settings set up that orphans could get created. So I would monitor that and I would say, oh, who created it? I'd go look at the created. They got associated as a secondary at the very least if they created the record. Looking at opportunity data, dollars and dates. These are huge for every widget that we run. For all of your hit rates, these are important. So looking at your dollars on a regular basis and not just saying which dollars are empty, because typically you have those dollars required, but what you're looking for is, do the dollars make sense? So my users figured out that I was running reports looking for dollars. So they started putting $5 or $10. So I knew that my firm was not chasing work for anything less than $500,000. So that was my new report. I said, anything less than $500,000, tell me. So then I caught the 5s, the 10s. They thought they were being sneaky, but I caught them. And even if they put $500,000 to get past me, okay, it's still better than $1 for my widgets because I'm at least projecting a reasonable number instead of skewing my widgets. Looking at your closed opportunities, you want to make sure that if there's anything required, so if you're sending a workflow for everything that got closed won to accounting, and they need things like bonding or project type or whatever those fields are, you want to make sure that you're monitoring that, because here's the deal. With the opportunity grid, you can change the stages and bypass all those requirements. So you, as the steward of your CRM, want to be making sure that you are monitoring, okay, my expectation is that when a record gets closed, it has all these fields filled out. Just run a report monthly, weekly, depending on how often you're closing report or opportunities. Looking at your date fields, again, if you have a workflow triggering off of a specific date, you want to have that date populated. For one of my clients, we are automating their bid calendars and their marketing calendars. So when the bid due date gets entered, a calendar invite gets created and put on the calendar in Cosential. So through that, every opportunity that has a bid needs to have that date. Likewise, they have an RFP SOQ date. When that gets populated, it goes to the marketing calendar. Now, if the stage goes to RFP submitted, that date had better be filled in, or in preparation, that date better be there. So things like that, you always want to make sure that the system is acting accordingly. Same thing with your categories. If you want to know at the end of the year what you pursued, all your categories need to be populated. Now on the project side, looking at start date, end date, especially if you have any sort of triggers of, based on the end date, I need to start project photography at 75% of the project. If you're basing that off of a date, then that field needs to be populated. If you are tracking dollars and you do not have an FDC, then you need to be watching that cost and fee field and making sure it gets populated. I would argue, again, distrust and verify, that even if you have an FDC, go ahead and monitor it, because there could be something either disconnected with the FDC, maybe accounting switched fields and now they're using a different field and it's no longer coming over. So just monitoring that. Again, it doesn't have to be something crazy like a weekly monitoring. It could be monthly or quarterly, but really it just depends on how often projects are coming through. Looking at the AIA A305 or the SF330, if any of those fields need to be populated for these forms that we're required to fill out on some of our proposals, then every project needs to have it. So the example that I gave here, the A305, for in-progress projects, you need an architect, percent complete, the owner, an owner contact. All of those can have audit reports so that you're finding them when you're in control and you have the ability and the time to run audits on your data, instead of, holy crap, the RFP is due tomorrow and now I got to run an AIA A305 and half of the data is missing. That's the worst case scenario. Categories, again, if you want to run anything by your firm org data, you want to make sure that that is being populated. Here's a catch to that. I always look, whenever I come into an account and do an audit, at what values are not being used. So for example, if I come in and a company has a market list this long, my guess is they don't need all those. So I'll run a report and say, group it by the values or the markets, and then I compare it to their value list and I go, oh, this little guy's not being used, this guy's not being used, oh, this one only has one record. So really using it to clean your value list is a way to use your audit reports as well. All right, so I talked fast and furious, but the one thing, if you only take one thing out of today, what I want you to know is that data that is loved tends to survive, and using your reports to love your data is the way to make your CRM successful. Our next free webinar is in 2 weeks on Tuesday, the 23rd, same bat channel, same bat time, 1 o'clock Central to 1:30. we're going to be going over data prep. And this is system agnostic, so it's basically Excel tips and tricks of how to prepare your data. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me, and I hope you enjoyed this 30 minutes and hope to see you in 2 weeks or on a user group call. Have a great day.